Hello and welcome. The news says on Israel-Gaza conflict push to extend Gaza pause as hostage return progresses. Hong Kong pro-democracy leaders in final defense. 41 workers saved from collapsed India tunnel. Ukraine counters Russian electronic warfare and helicopter crash claims 5 U.S. service members. On Israel-Gaza conflict, as the humanitarian halt in combat in Gaza entered its 5th day on Tuesday and more Israeli hostages were exchanged for Palestinian prisoners, international mediators push for an even longer break in the crisis. The two sides have agreed to a 48-hour extension of the initial 4-day stop in exchange for the release of 20 more Israeli hostages and 60 Palestinian prisoners. Aid organizations hope the break will permit for the delivery of additional desperately necessary supplies to the besieged Palestinian enclave, where the humanitarian situation is deteriorating as winter weather sets in. 12 more hostages were released, Israel said. 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals on Tuesday evening. The hostages had arrived in Israel and their families had been notified of their return, the office of the Prime Minister said. In exchange, 30 Palestinian prisoners, 15 women and 15 children will be released, said Majid Al-Nasser, a spokesman for the Foreign Ministry of Qatar, a mediator in the agreement, said. Israel's prison service said it had released 30 prisoners. Top U.S. officials headed to the region to work on prolonging the holds into something more durable to preserve the sporadic break in the extreme fighting that has transfixed the world and thrown the whole region into chaos. The United States also has made clear to Israel that when its campaign in Gaza resumes, it cannot be carried out with the same force that was seen so far in the northern half of the enclave, where more than half the buildings have been damaged or destroyed, forcing most civilians to flee southward. CIA Director William J. Burns went to Qatar in an attempt to stave off a recommencement of hostilities on Tuesday to meet with his Israeli counterpart in hopes of brokering a deal that will include many more days of quiet on the release of not just women and children held hostage, but also men and military personnel. Lots of Hong Kong's most prominent pro-democracy figures are one step closer to learning their fate in the city's biggest national security case to date, as prosecutors and lawyers are returning to court Wednesday to make closing speeches almost 3 years since the mass arrest. The 47 activists and politicians were charged with conspiracy to commit subversion for their roles in holding an illegal primary election in 2020 to decide who should contest city lawmaker elections. Those on trial say the plan was simply part of the pluralistic oppositional politics that has long been allowed in Hong Kong. Prosecutors argue it resulted in a massive and well-organized scheme to subvert the Hong Kong government. If convicted, they could face a maximum punishment of life imprisonment. The prosecution is the most sweeping crackdown on Hong Kong's pro-democracy camp since Beijing enforced a national security law on the semi-autonomous city in 2020 following mass anti-government protests the prior year. For critics, the fate of the Hong Kong 47, as the defendants have come to be known, provides a plain window into how the national security law has reduced political dissent and activism in the once outspoken city, even through channels once permitted in its fractional democracy. Most of the accused have been held in detention for over 2 years in a case that is being closely watched for how Hong Kong's judiciary, long a cornerstone of the international financial hub's success, would apply the national security law at a time when Beijing is tightening its grip. The Hong Kong government has continually denied the national security law is destroying freedoms. Instead, it maintains the law has ended chaos and restored stability to the city. The 47 defendants include seasoned politicians, elected lawmakers and young protested leaders, as well as academics, unionists and journalists and medical workers. They come from numerous generations and a wide political spectrum, from moderate Democrats to those who advocate for Hong Kong's self-determination. Now, on Tuesday, cheers greeted a group of 41 workers as they emerged from a collapsed tunnel under the Himalayas, the peak of an incredible and perilous weeks-long rescue operation to drill through rock and debris. For 17 days, the men had been stuck as recovery teams drill an escape route through the mountain with several hindrances as they faced technical problems before the last few meters were drilled by hand. Video footage from the scene showed Pushkar Singh Dhami, Chief Minister of Uttarakhand State, meeting the workers as they emerged from the tunnel amidst jubilant scenes. All 41 of the workers seemed to be healthy, Dhami confirmed on Tuesday night local time. Narendra Modi, Indian Prime Minister, said the successful rescue is making everyone emotional in a statement. Since November 12th, the men had been trapped when the part of tunnel they were helping to construct in India's northern Uttarakhand state gave way, blocking their only exit with more than 60 meters, 200 feet of the broken rock, concrete and twisted metal. The first workers were removed following a series of agonizing setbacks, during which rescue struggles were stopped when the heavy machinery used to drill through the debris broke down, forcing workers to partially dig by hand and adopt other riskier methods to bring them to safety. Drone video surfaced online appearing to show an aimed strike blowing up 3 antennas on the roof of an apartment block in early November. The Ukrainian drone commander who posted it claimed to have destroyed a Russian Pol 21 electronic warfare system on the eastern front near Donetsk. Ukraine is already running to catch up with Russia when it comes to electronic warfare. This raid also shows how Kyiv is hastening to destroy Moscow's technology on the battlefield, a sign of how significant it may be for future of the war. Electronic warfare, or EW, involves weapons or tactics using the electromagnetic spectrum. It is being employed by both militaries in this conflict, predominantly through electronic jammers that threw off GPS guided targeting systems, causing rockets to miss their aims. After almost 6 months of Ukraine's slow and grinding counter-offensive, it's clear Russia has not just built up physical defenses but formidable electronic ones, and Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines are having to adapt quickly. The drone commander with Ukraine's 59th Motorized Brigade, Pavlo Prichchenko, who carried out the early November strike, says successfully destroying these systems is there if Ukraine is to liberate more territory. The video he posted on social media is one of a growing number of Ukrainian military and media reports of successful strikes against Pol 21 systems alone since the summer. Still ahead on the news, the U.S. military said on Sunday 5 American service members were killed when a helicopter crashed into the Mediterranean during a training exercise. Military officials did not stipulate where the helicopter was flying from, but the United States has deployed a carrier strike group to the Mediterranean as part of struggles to stop the Israel-Hamas war from escalating into a regional conflict. During a routine air refueling mission as part of military training, a U.S. military aircraft carrying 5 service members suffered a mishap and crashed into the Mediterranean Sea. The U.S. European Command EUCOM said in a statement all 5 of the service members on board the aircraft were killed. President Joe Biden, in a statement from the White House, paid tribute to the victims who died on a weekend when Americans were honoring military veterans. Lloyd Austin, Defense Secretary, also offered his condolences in a statement that identified the crashed aircraft as a helicopter. While EUCOM initially said the crash occurred on November 10th, Austin said the helicopter went down on Saturday morning. Washington rushed military support to Israel and strengthened its forces in the region, including with the USS Gerald R. 4 aircraft carrier and other warships, after the Hamas militant group carried out a shock cross-border attack from Gaza on October 7th that Israeli officials say killed nearly 1,200 people, mostly civilians. Israel's military reacted with a persistent air, land and naval assault on Gaza that the territory's health ministry said has left over 11,000 people dead. U.S. forces in the region have faced a rise in attacks connected to the conflict in recent weeks and have been aimed more than 40 times since mid-October, leaving dozens of American personnel with minor injuries. Washington has blamed Iran-backed militias for the violence and has carried out 3 strikes against Iran-linked sites in Syria, 2 on October 26th and 1 on Wednesday. There have been multiple other crashes of U.S. military aircraft in recent years, including an F-35 stealth warplane that went down in September with the pilot able to eject. On more stories, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia to host World Expo 2023 in another hosting victory for a Gulf country after Qatar put on football's World Cup last year. The Expo 2030 World's Fair will be held in Riyadh. South Korea's Busan and Italy's Rome were also in the running to host the World's Fair, a once every 5-year event that attracts millions of visitors and billions of dollars in investment. On Tuesday, Saudi Arabia's capital won 119 votes, Busan 29 and Rome 17. Results from 182 members of the Paris-based Bureau International d'Exposition BIA showed Saudi Arabia required to garner 2/3 of the votes to win in the first round. The Italian contestants were scornful in their criticism of the result. Saudi Arabia, as the only declared candidate, is set to host the 2034 World Cup and is also planning an Olympics bid. The win is the icing on the cake for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's ambitious Vision 2030 program, which intends to dissuade the country of its oil dependency. Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud said, "We had a fantastic team of ministers going around the world, engaging our counterparts in a very, very active way to understand what they expected, what they were looking for, and what we should deliver in order to gain their trust." Critics said the Crown Prince wants to use the expo to boost his country's image after the 2018 murder of prominent Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi by a team of Saudi agents. Now in Africa, Togo opposition urges talks on constitutional vacuum. On Monday, Togo's government said the next legislative and regional polls will take place at the latest at the end of the first quarter of 2024. This deferment was condemned on Tuesday by the coordinator of the DMP coalition of opposition parties, Bridget Kafur Johnson, criticizes an impracticable timetable for genuinely free elections and alerts about an institutional vacuum. "We are headed towards a constitutional vacuum. Our constitution requires us to hold elections at least 30 days before the mandate of the assembly expires. Taking a broad view, the mandate ends at the end of December, and that means that we will have an assembly which will no longer be based on any legality, an assembly in which the ruling party hold the majority and supports the government. This means that the government itself will no longer have any legality, and Togo's problems will be even more complicated," she said. Monday's announcement sets back President Faure Nasibe's vow to hold polls within 12 months. If an audit intended to assess the transparency and accuracy of the electoral register was recently declared reliable, the opposition maintains that there are other sources of concern. "We consider that nothing was resolved by this electoral file audit. Everything needs to be reviewed, starting with the conflicting censors, and this is why we are in the ECOWAS Court of Justice against the state." The opposition coalition coordinator has called for the revitalization of the Electoral Commission's mandate and fairer constituency boundaries, among other reforms. Most prominently, she's asked for discussions with the government to solve unsettled issues, cautioning of demonstrations if no consultation is organized in the run-up to the vote. In 2010, Njabango Johnson became the first woman to run for the president in the West African state, but withdrew her candidacy fearing fraud. Togo's head of state has been in power since 2005 after the death of his father, General Ayedima Nasimbe, who ruled the country for 38 years. Now we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Stories from Nigeria says Tinubu requests to borrow $8.699 billion and 100 million euros. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has sought the approval of the House of Representatives for the federal government to borrow $8.699 billion and 100 million euros in the 2022-2024 external borrowing plan. He also asked the House to accord him audience to present the 27 trillion naira budget for the 2024 financial year before a joint session of the National Assembly on Wednesday. These requests were contained in two separate letters from the President addressed to the Speaker of the House, Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, who read them at the plenary resumed yesterday. Tinubu said the loans were projected to fund projects cutting across sectors, principally infrastructure, agriculture, health, education, water supply, roads, security and employment generation, as well as financial management, amongst others. He wrote, "I write with reference to above subject matter and to submit the attached federal government 2022 to 2024 external borrowing rolling plan for consideration and approval of the National Assembly to ensure optimal implementation of the budget. The honourable members may wish to know that the past administration approved the 2022 to 2024 borrowing plan at the Federal Executive Council held on May 15, 2023. Following the removal of the fuel subsidy and its attendant impact on our economy, African Development Bank and the World Bank Group have indicated interest in assisting the country to mitigate the impact with a sum of $1 billion and $1.5 billion respectively, in addition to the FEC approved 2022 to 2024 external average borrowing plan. Consequently, the required approval is in the sum of $8 billion and 100 million euros. I would like to underscore the fact that the projects and programs in the borrowing plan were selected based on positive technical economic evaluation, as well as the expected contribution to the socio-economic development of the country, including employment generation, skills acquisition, support towards the emergence of young entrepreneurs, poverty reduction and food security to improve the livelihood in all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Considering the huge infrastructure deficit in the country and the enormous financial resources required to bridge the gap in funding infrastructure in the face of dwindling financial resources, it has become imperative that we resort to prudent external borrowing to bridge the financial gap, which will largely be applied to key infrastructure projects including power, railway, health, among others. Given the nature of these facilities and the need to return the country to normalcy, it has become necessary to request the House of Representatives to consider and approve the 2022 to 2024 external average borrowing plan to enable the government deliver its responsibilities to Nigerians through expedient disbursement and efficient project implementation. I hereby forward the proposed 2022 to 2024 external borrowing plan and trust that it will receive judicious consideration and passage of the House of Representatives. The letter read. In the second letter, President Tinubu said, "May I crave the kind indulgence of the House of Representatives to grant me the 11 hours on Wednesday, 29th November 2023 to formally present the 2024 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. While I look forward to addressing the joint session, please accept, Right Honorable Speaker, the assurances of my highest regard." On judicial matters, NJC screens 22 nominees for Supreme Court. On Friday, the National Judicial Council may send the names of 11 successful candidates to President Bola Tinubu for appointment into the Supreme Court, according to a report on Tuesday. Report also said the 22 shortlisted justices were screened on Tuesday at the committee room of the NJC in Abuja from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. The screened justices were divided into priority and reserve candidates, report said. The priority candidates include Justice Jumai Sanki, Justice Stephen Ada, Justice Mohammed Idris, Justice Abubakar Umar, Justice Chidebere Uwa, Justice Obande Obinya, Justice Ogochukwu Ugaku, Justice Mo Udemi, and Justice Habib Abiru. The names of the reserve candidates are Justice Mohammed Sarajo, Justice Ridwan Abdullahi, Justice Joseph Ukige, Justice Abubakar Talba, Justice Bilkisu Aliyu, Justice Abdullahi Bayero, Justice Oyekechi Otisi, Justice Theresa Orji Abadwa, Justice Choma Wosu Iheme, Justice Boabele George Will, and Justice Oyowole Kayode. Following the retirement of Musa Datijo, the Apex Court was reduced to 10 justices. His retirement came after that of Justice Amina Ugi on September 22, 2023, and the death of Justice Chima Nweze on July 31, 2023. The 10 justices at the Supreme Court fall short of the 21 stipulated by Section 230, subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution. A source at the National Judicial Council who spoke on condition of anonymity said the names of the shortlisted justices were cleared by the various security agencies, including the Department of State Services, DSS, the police, before they were forwarded to the NJC. According to the NJC guideline for the appointment of justices to the Apex Court, the chairman of the Judicial Services Commission Stroke Committee is anticipated to come up with a provisional shortlist of the merits. The list is to consist of no less than twice the number of the judicial officers planned to be appointed at the exact time, and circulate the provincial shortlist together with a request for comments on the suitability or otherwise of any of the shortlisted candidates. The list is then forwarded to the NJC for its consideration of each of the shortlisted candidates. The candidates who have been shortlisted shall undergo an interview to be conducted by the NJC as ascertain his or her suitability, after which the names of the successful candidates are forwarded to the President. And finally, on the news, Tinubu heads to Dubai for COP28. On Wednesday, President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja for Dubai, United Arab Emirates, UAE, to join the COP28 Climate Summit, also known as the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, or Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC COP28. President Tinubu will deliver a national statement emphasizing Nigeria's stance on various thematic issues, including renewable energy, on climate financing, at the World Leaders Summit, which takes place on 1st and 2nd December under the theme Unite, Act and Deliver. Mindful of the extreme effects of climate change on Nigeria, such as desertification, flooding, erosion, drought, and national security risk arising therefrom, the President will exploit the opportunity given by the platform to advocate more financial and technical support for developing nations, while reminding developed countries of their public vow to provide $100 billion yearly for support to localized initiatives to tackle climate change related challenges. The President's message will also aim on holding business and institutions accountable, reflecting Nigeria's dedication to sustainable and responsible practices. The Nigerian delegation to COP28 will enthusiastically explore creating new and stronger bilateral partnerships to implement Nigeria's energy transition, Article 6 projects, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes ITMOs, technology transfer, capacity building, and methane mitigation. President Tinubu, while in Dubai, will partake in crucial sideline events which will further support the development of his affirmed commitment to aggressively attract foreign direct investment for improved wealth creation and revenue expansion in the country, in addition to other events hosted by the Nigerian delegation. The President, who will be accompanied by senior government officials, is anticipated to return to Abuja at the end of the summit. A recap of major stories says push to extend Gaza pause as hostage return progresses. Hong Kong pro-democracy leaders in final defense. 41 workers saved from collapse India tunnel. Ukraine counters Russia electronic warfare, and helicopter crash claims 5 U.S. service members. That's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Straki.